What's up, everybody? It is the Power Ranking Show. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Elliot is out this week. He should be back next week on a little bit of a vacation, so we'll see him then. Joining me today is the fantastic Chad Ryder from NFL.com. You guys know him from this show. You can also listen to him on the Locked On Cowboys podcast this week, where Chad and I did a show talking about the Cowboys draft. But Chad, how are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great. I'm happy to be pinch hitting for Mr. Harrison. I'm like Manny Mota for all those people that are listening that know 1980s baseball. I'm thrilled to be here to talk some draft.
Yeah, so because Elliot's out, we get to nerd out a little bit and we get to talk about some college prospects, right? Because otherwise, you know that he wouldn't let us do this show. So actually, that's not true. It's been very accommodating to our nerdom. But so today we're going to talk about Chad's top 8 players going into the 2022 college football season and 2023 prospects. Chad, a pretty good list that you have here. And again, these are not guys that we are going to match up with teams. We're just talking about 8 players that you are really excited to see this year.
Yeah, and I have no interest in doing a mock draft until after the underclassmen have officially declared. So I'm very thankful not to be doing that. But there's a lot of guys, really interesting guys to watch this year. I think people will generally be more excited about this draft than they were the last one.
Yes.
For many reasons, more skill players, more quarterbacks, some really great guys on defense. So it's going to be a really thrilling year of college football. And of course, that's going to lead to an excellent draft.
All right, let's get into your number 8 player here, Antonio Johnson, safety from Texas A&M, a big safety. What can you tell us about him?
Yeah, and it's an interesting because he's going to be 6'2" and change, about 200 pounds. And frankly, A&M uses him as a slot corner more than anything else. I mean, he lines up in the box at times. And it'll be his NFL projection will be very interesting because he can play safety. He can play all over the place. He's an excellent athlete, very quick feet, very physical defender. And it wouldn't shock me if a team that used a lot of man coverage just wanted to put him at outside corner and play him out there and instead of at safety. I think he's got the ability to do that. We're going to see that sometimes, these guys don't work out quite as well as we thought, a la Kyle Hamilton, and that will affect that projection a little bit. But to me, he does a great job in the slot against smaller receivers, tight ends. He could stick with tight ends, really good tight ends, plays the run very well, very physical guy. So he does a little bit of everything. So he's a really interesting prospect. And if a team really thinks he can be a great center fielder, if they think he can be a really good press corner, if they want him in that role, then he could easily go top 10.
You're seeing the NFL be more open to these type of, secondary defenders where we don't really care what we call them, whether you're slot corner, outside corner, free safety, box safety. Just get your 5 best defensive backs on the field and figure it out. I mean, we saw it in Dallas last year with like Jaron Kearse.
Yep.
It was like a 6'4" safety. We've seen it now, like Dax Hill for the Bengals. Some people viewed him as a slot corner. Some viewed him as a free safety. I don't think it really matters, right? Just find your best defensive backs and put them on the field.
That's right. We're getting to positionless football almost at this point, right? You've got the guys up front. You've got and whatever you do after that is fine. Whatever they look like, as long as they're making plays, as long as they can tackle, get them out there and get your best guys on the field, as you said.
All right, our next guy here at number 7, Myles Murphy, a defensive end from Clemson. Now, I'm a little scarred because of one of the teams I covered taking Clelin Ferrell at number 4. One of the bigger defensive ends. How is he different from Ferrell?
Well, Murphy is much more. First of all, he was just picked too early, and that's not his fault. I mean, he was picked way before anybody else would have picked him. So that's not his issue. He should have been picked late in the first round where he would have been better value. Okay. And that's where we expected him to go. But Murphy he is not dissimilar to Travon Walker in my mind, because he's got the build. He's going to be a little bigger this year. He can stand up. He moves really well when asked to drop into zone for a guy who's 275 pounds, 6'5", 275. So there's a lot. Like if he was playing on Georgia's line, I don't know that you'd be able to tell a lot of difference between him and Walker, honestly. The more I watch him, the more I like him. Wouldn't shock me if he ended up top 5 in the end, depending on how this season goes. So I think he's more stout than Farrell. And I think honestly, like his power is fantastic, but he's not just a power rusher. He really can turn the corner if in pure pass rush mode. So he can do a little bit of everything. And I really think he's going to be an outstanding playmaker for them this year. And by the way, there's also another Myles Murphy that you have to be careful about. North Carolina's got a defensive tackle who's also very talented, right? So when you're watching college football, you might be confused by that at some point.
So, Chad, one of the things that I like to study for defensive linemen and pass rushers is tackles for a loss per game. Yeah. And that we've seen all of the top guys in the NFL. I mean, name your favorite pass rusher. Those guys all hit at least 1.25 tackles per loss per game in their best college season. We've already seen Murphy do that as a sophomore. 10 games, 14 and a half tackles for a loss, 8 sacks. If he can build on that here in his junior season, I mean, you're talking about a guy that could easily be a top 10 pick and maybe even higher than that.
Yeah. And the thing with those, kind of statistical, there are always issues, right? When you're looking at a Georgia defense, where we've got so many guys up front that they don't get the play. It would be interesting to do like a per play analysis rather than a per game analysis to see what kind of, what kind of production rate they have. But yeah, I agree. He's fantastic. They'll rotate him regularly in that offense too. So he may not have humongous stats all the time, but his skill set is outstanding. And he's just going to be one of these a base 4-3 end, power end, but with the agility to actually stand up. And you don't see that a lot.
Yeah. Let's go ahead to your number 6 player, a certain wide receiver from Ohio State. Now, we had 2 Ohio State receivers drafted in the top 11 this year. And this guy might be even better.
Plus a former Ohio State receiver picked at number 12. Right? Yeah. So, I mean, it was basically a 3 for Ohio State. Yes. And Jackson Smith-Njigba at times look like the best out of the 3 at times. And I think part of that is because the outside receivers got so much, attention that he worked in the slot a lot and found himself available in open space. And with his speed and elusiveness after the catch, he could be the most dynamic out of the 3. If 3 years down the line in the NFL, it would not shock me at all to see him be the most dynamic receiver out of the 3. Not a huge receiver. He's going to probably work inside a lot, but this year it'll be interesting to see if Ohio State uses him more outside with Marvin Harrison Jr. and some of the other really talented young receivers they have, to see his full skill set. And I think even though he's pretty slim, kind of like Chris Olave, he's bigger than Chris Olave, but even though if he comes in at 185 to 190, he's a strong runner too. So he can do a little bit of everything, and he's a lot of fun to watch.
Size wise, he actually reminds me a lot of CeeDee Lamb, where 6 foot, but kind of that 185, 190 build. Final 5 games for Smith-Njigba, 60 catches, 958 yards and 6 touchdowns, capped off by a 15 catch, 347 yard day against Utah. I mean, this guy was he was so good in the final 8 games of the season. I think he's got a legitimate chance to be the number 1 receiver in this class and maybe even a top 5 pick.
Yeah, he could. It'll be, again, the workouts have something to say about that at some level. And there's going to be quite a few quarterbacks potentially and more in the conversation this year than last year. Yeah. But certainly top 10, is a real possibility.
You've got another receiver ranked right next to him at number 5 from LSU. Can you tell us about this guy?
Yeah, Kayshon Boutte from LSU got hurt last year. He's had a couple of surgeries on an ankle, so that's the caveat with him. But if he returns, if you played 2 clips of LSU football over the last 5 years, and you saw a guy with a number 1 jersey running around the field, there are times where you wouldn't be able to tell if that was Jamar Chase or Kayshon Boutte. You can't, because they're very similar in size. Chase is probably a little bigger, and Boutte's got a little more quickness, short area quickness. So they're a little different, but boy, man, when they have that uniform, that number 1 uniform is just all over the place for LSU, and he's so much fun to watch because he's strong. He's like 6 foot 190, so he's not a big receiver, but he plays much bigger than that. He is so elusive. He is so fast in the open field. When the quarterback is right in LSU, which hasn't happened a whole lot over the last 20 years when Joe Burrow wasn't there, when the quarterback is making those throws to him, he's outstanding in all areas of the game. So inside, outside, short passes, deep passes, he can get behind. Amazing body control on the sidelines and the ability to win jump balls. He does a little bit of everything, which is why I put him just slightly ahead of Smith and Jigba. I just think when he's healthy, he's just that little bit bigger, a little bit better his overall game.
I remember watching in 2020, it was the LSU Ole Miss game. That game that was 53-48. It was just an absolute barn burner. 14 catches for 308 yards and 3 touchdowns. If you even go back and look at his final 3 games in 2020, and then the first game in 2021 when they played UCLA, in those 4 games, 36 receptions, 675 yards, and 7 touchdowns. Battled some injuries, didn't play after the Kentucky game last year. But I mean, the pace that he was on was absolutely ridiculous. I mean, he was on pace to beat out like Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase's numbers. So he needs to stay healthy, but the talent is clearly there.
Yeah. He's a really fun watch.
All right, at number 4 is your first quarterback that we're going to talk about, C.J. Stroud from Ohio State. I saw an article from Dane Brugler at The Athletic today. He has Stroud as his number 1 quarterback in the class. I think opinions are mixed as to who is QB1 in this class, but you've got Stroud at QB2. What are your thoughts?
A really good pocket passer. The thing about him is that, a lot of typical pocket passers don't have great touch on underneath throws and intermediate throws. And Stroud really does that well. And I think that sort of separates him from other guys that you might want to compare him to. He's got the hose, man. I mean, he can let the ball go. And when he does that, it's a lot of fun. But I think it's really nice to see a guy who can move within the pocket. He's not elite in his footwork. I wouldn't say he's that, but he can move enough within the pocket. He can do enough as a runner to get the tough yards, but yet he's able to take something off those throws when he can to make sure his receiver can get it and make a play after the catch. So that's something I really like about him. He's got some things to work on in terms of his accuracy in the intermediate area, making sure he's not pressing when pressure, trying to make a throw. And sometimes even making a couple of turnovers last year when his team had the lead, when you really can't do that. It's a young player. He's got another year here to really step his game up. So this is a little bit of a projection, but I think he's really talented.
How would you compare him to Justin Fields, who came out of Ohio State 2 years ago, or I guess a year ago? Do you think he's a better prospect, similar?
I think they're different players. I really do. If they didn't wear the same uniform, I don't think we would compare them. Honestly, I think Fields is really more of an athlete. Stroud just isn't that kind of athlete. I would trust Fields to make more plays on the run. Stroud's capable of doing that. But he's really best in the pocket. And I don't think that's where Fields was, his best. But he made plays there, obviously. But I think Stroud is really more of a traditional pocket guy that can distribute the ball pretty easily. He's got some things to work on in terms of his progression, right? Going from 2 to 3 to 4. But the one thing I don't want to label him as just a pocket passer, because when he gets available outside the pocket, he's very, very patient. And he also makes good decisions throwing the ball out of bounds. So he does a lot of really good things. One more year in that system, he should be, ready to be one of the top prospects.
At number 3 is the other quarterback that I want to talk about, Bryce Young from Alabama. And I struggle with him because I love the anticipation. I love the accuracy. I love the way that he hangs in the pocket. Like, you watch that Georgia game. I mean, he is getting smashed in the pocket and he's still delivering bullets. But what do you do with a sub 6 foot quarterback that's not really, a mobile athlete guy? I mean, he can move around a little bit, but he's not Kyler Murray. He's not Lamar Jackson or Michael Vick or anything like that. So what do you do with Bryce Young?
I think he's more like Kyler Murray, but he's just not as fat, like short area quicks. You know what I mean? Sure. But I think as a runner, he's very effective. I think he's straight line. Now, a couple of times when I was watching games, he's tried to elude guys, and that's not what he should do, right? He should just run and then get down, basically. But the thing I do like about him is his competitiveness. And that toughness and competitiveness helps him get a touchdown. He gets over the goal line as a runner. He gets the first down as a runner. And in the pocket, he does a really good job. You know, again, guys that are 5'11", you got to have the passing lanes, right? He has a really fast delivery, really quick delivery, and you got to appreciate that. And the small things that he does, you know, people say, oh, those are short passes he's throwing. Throwing a short pass to your running back perfectly so he can make a play afterwards is not something that
it's a skill. It's a skill set, right?
Right. And he works every level of the game. He's at the line of scrimmage calling, changing protections, changing plays, and he does all the little things really well. And so I think he's really good. I mean, look, you don't want to compare every 5'11" quarterback to Russell Wilson, right? Yeah. I mean, you don't want to do that. But boy, this guy's got the leadership. And look, his arm isn't plus. I wouldn't say his arm's plus, but it's plenty. It's plenty. He can flick the ball 50 yards. He's fine. But I think he does everything at an above average level, plus that just enough athleticism where if you just let him go and work outside the pocket, if you're in an offense where you can roll this guy left and right, he's going to run 15 yards on you before you know it. And in addition to being really smart about finding targets on the run too. He's not a run first guy, which is what one thing I like about him a lot. He's not a run first guy, but he'll do it. But he'll look downfield for a guy. And like you said, the accuracy is really good. And you know, all these guys have things they have to work on: their footwork, making sure that you're under pressure. When you've got a 5'11" guy in the pocket under pressure, his feet speed up a little bit, right? And then he's trying to get rid of the ball quickly. And sometimes he throws it into places he shouldn't. So he's got to work on the maturity and the patience and what to do in the pocket like every other quarterback. But he's really, I really like him as a prospect. And I think he's going to be, one of the top couple of guys picked.
He's in a weird spot where for some talent evaluators, it doesn't matter the type of season that he's going to have, right? Because he could throw for 70 touchdowns and no interceptions, but some teams are going to be like, you know what, we're just not taking, let's say, an average arm quarterback that's under 6 foot tall. And if you look at the history of the NFL, I mean, even recent history, right? Tua was 6 foot. Johnny Manziel under 6 foot. You just don't have a lot of these guys. Baker Mayfield was 6 foot on the dot. A lot of these guys just don't have a lot of success passing the ball in the NFL. So I believe that he can do it because his anticipation and his accuracy is so good, but he's just not going to be for everybody. And I don't think he's the clear-cut number one pick in this class because he's not 6'3" and he doesn't have a big cannon arm. And he's not a runner that's going to run over guys like Justin Herbert or Josh Allen. Like, just not his game.
Well, I'll tell you, I think it's going to be very interesting to see how Kyler Murray does this year. Yes. Because if he is outstanding this year, that's going to help Bryce Young, I think, quite a bit. Because I think there's going to be a lot of comparisons between those two, even though we know Murray's a different kind of runner and they're not the same. But
if Kyler and Tua, both of those quarterbacks struggled this year, the Alabama quarterback that's 6 foot tall and the 5'10" Kyler Murray were being nice.
Well, you have to remember too that until Russell Wilson came along, guys like Derek King would have been moved to receiver when they got to college. Okay. Yeah. So we don't have 40 years of data to look at in terms of how good short quarterbacks can be. We just don't. A lot of them get converted and they don't get a chance to play. And so I'm really hesitant to say he's short, therefore he can't play, because we don't have enough of a sample size of these kind of guys. I just don't think we're there yet. I think Young does everything, and I will happily ignore the height if he's able to do everything.
I agree, but I also think the NFL told us a little bit about how much height matters in the draft this year, right? Because we saw somebody like Malik Willis, who you and I at least liked as a prospect, go in the third round. Sam Howell, who a lot of people thought could maybe sneak into the first round, fell to the fifth round. Baker Mayfield gets traded for a conditional fifth round pick. I think because we've had so many of these big athletic quarterbacks work out that teams are just done with these smaller quarterbacks. Like, we're just going to bet on tools and upside.
Yeah, and we'll see how this group does.
Yes.
And I think it's very dangerous when you use size as the again, the Seahawks dined off picking Russell Wilson in the third round for many years, right? That group is still employed in Seattle because of that. And I think if one or two of the guys in this past draft class turn out, then you're going to see that owner's going to be like, wait a minute, why didn't you take these guys? Well, he's short. Well, this, well, that. It's like, no, we're getting beat by this guy now. So again, if Kyler comes out and has a great year, if Tua comes back, and Tua, like comparing Bryce Young and Tua's, they're not the same. They're not the same.
They're not the same. They're not.
They're not at all the same. Totally different release. Totally different players. So I don't think you compare that. But I think it's really dangerous to you're just taking yourself out of the market for really good players if you're using that as a benchmark, as your main benchmark.
I agree. It's just, we know that it happens in the NFL, right? We know that
for sure. I mean, we're not talking. Yeah, some teams didn't like Rashawn Slater because they had a quote guard build, right? Well, that's ludicrous. He was an excellent tackle in college. He's going to be he's already won in the pros. So, the teams will definitely do that.
All right, let's go to your number 2 player, Jalen Carter, defensive tackle from Georgia. I mean, this is a guy that when you're watching film from last year, when you're watching Jordan Davis and you're watching Devontae Wyatt, you're like, listen, these guys are good. Like,
who's 88?
Yeah, give me 88. That's the guy that's up the field making plays. Tell us a little bit about Jalen Carter.
Yeah, he's still growing, scarily enough.
Oh my gosh.
He's going to be, like 6'5", 300. Very like Richard Seymour for people who are, from the Wayback Machine, work for the Patriots. He just gets upfield. He's so powerful and so fast off the snap. And yet when you see him running to the sideline regularly to chase after guys at that size, you just realize how athletic this guy really is. He's a fantastic player. As you said, he flashes. He didn't have to play 100 snaps a game because they have so much talent up front. So when he was fresh, he's coming off the ball so hard, and he can also get off blocks, which is very important. Some guys just don't do that. A lot of teams maybe didn't like Perry and Winfrey as much because when he's blocked, and instead of just shooting gaps. That's not the case with Carter. Very strong upper body, can move guys as well as get off the snap, play 5-tech inside, wherever you want to play him. Very versatile, and he could be the best out of all those first round picks from last year. He could be the best player out of them.
I thought he was the best player of that defense last year. And that's even including Nakobe Dean and Lewis Cine and Jordan Davis and Travon Walker, who was the number 1 pick. I thought Carter was the best one. I think he's got a chance to be a better prospect than like Quinnen Williams, who was the 3rd pick in the 2019 draft. I think that's the level of player, if not better, that you can get out of Jalen Carter.
Yeah.
All right. Last one.
The only issue, quickly, the only issue I have with Carter is that he kind of forgets that he's 300 pounds now sometimes. So he'll how hockey players say that they lose their edge if they lose their skate and fall on the ice. He gets on the ground sometimes because he just gets so excited and just has to play within himself a little bit. But man, I mean, it's just what a phenomenal athlete and player this guy's going to be.
Yeah, he is so good. Just go watch any of those Georgia games from last year, and he's dominating anytime he's in the game. All right. Here at number 1, Will Anderson, edge rusher from Alabama. You're going to have to talk me off the cliff on this one because I love Will Anderson. My statement and belief that I've had from him of the last couple of weeks is I think he might be the best edge rusher to come in the NFL in the last 20 years or so. What do you think about Will?
Since Vaughn,
I mean, definitely since Vaughn. And you compare their size and their play style and even their statistics, and man, I think Will Anderson might even be better.
I did some comparison with him and Vaughn the other day, just because I've had this going in my mind for a while now. And at A&M, Vaughn, he's a more fluid runner. Vaughn is and Will is not as fluid, and he's a little more stiff hips than Vaughn. However, he is so powerful for a 245-pound guy consistently pushing around 300-pounders inside. Just like Vaughn, when he was at A&M, played with his hand down in a 4-point stance quite a bit, like you did in A&M, and really powerful off the snap. And the thing with Will is that he's a smart player and he's coached well. So he's not always just rushing up the field to go get the quarterback, right? I mean, he got to play against, especially these scrambling, really athletic quarterbacks. So he doesn't just rush up the field, but when he's in pass rush mode, forget it. He's got long arms, which he uses for great leverage. If a tackle's on his heels, forget it. He's running right over you to get to the quarterback. He can turn the corner and get parallel to the line of scrimmage, getting that quarterback. And with his length, he's just going to swallow that guy up. And he's so impressive. 34 and a half tackles for loss, led the nation last year. 12 and a half more than Devin Lloyd, who is number 2. That's insane. That's an insane gap.
Can I give you another stat on tackles for loss? Because it's so interesting. So I've looked at edge rushers since 1990, the most tackles for a loss for these edge rushers. And there's been one edge rusher since 1990, other than Willie Anderson, to have 30 or more tackles for a loss in a season. And it was George Selvey for South Florida.
Florida. Yeah,
but he's playing in a much lesser conference. Yes. For Will Anderson to do that, it's absolutely incredible. And if you look at like the history of these guys that like run a sub 4.65 and have 30 or 25 tackles for a loss or more in their career, I mean, you're looking at like the best of the best edge rushers in NFL history. I mean, he's absolutely incredible.
Yeah, and he's not just a pass rusher though. And the thing is he is dropped into coverage at times, and he looks pretty good, even though he's a little more stiff than a guy like Von. But he still looks good. He plays the run. He is not going to get shoved around even by a double team. He's going to play the run. He does everything. He's just an outstanding defender. And it's going to be a lot of fun again to watch him again this year and really, try to get Alabama back to winning a national title as if they took a big dip last year, right? But
the best defensive prospect. Well, let's say this: best defensive prospect to enter the NFL draft since Von Miller in 2011. So that's a decade. Like that's how rare he is. Yep. And what's fascinating about him is he's not 6'5", 270 like Myles Garrett, but it doesn't matter. I mean, he can beat you in so many different ways. And I think he's scheme versatile. You can play him in a 4-3, 3-4. Right. You can use him on stunts. I mean, truly a generational, edge rusher. It's why I love him so much. And if I was his agent or if I was somebody around him, what benefit does he have for playing this year? Like, what's the positive that could happen here for him?
Yeah, it's tough. And I think though, guys are too competitive to do look, Ja'Marr Chase was competitive, but there was extenuating circumstances right before with him opting out.
Well, I also think, I mean, he opted out because of, the COVID season, but he was also coming off a national championship win, right? If Alabama beats Georgia last year, I wonder if Willie Anderson's playing this year, right? Because now he's chasing that national championship.
I think Coach Saban would really hound these guys into his whole iron sharpens iron and competitiveness and all that stuff. And NFL teams would not drop his grade if he didn't play this year. There's no chance. Despite all the talk about that. But I think these players love playing football and they love the competition, and it would be really tough for them to sit out, even though it might make the financial sense and all the other sense. I think it's really difficult for that. But I won't be shocked if down the road we start seeing a little bit more of that. And that's the other reason, by the way, that colleges want a bigger playoff. Smart colleges, because that keeps all these guys in, right? If you have a 12-team playoff, those guys aren't leaving. And so I think not only does the SEC want to, make sure that more of their schools get into a playoff because they've given away their chance to win other divisions or other conferences by going to the SEC, this is another reason to do that.
I would also tell Willie Anderson, look at what happened in the NFL last year. Ja'Marr Chase was the 5 pick? Sat out the season, was the rookie of the year on offense. Micah Parsons sat out the season, was the number 12 pick, defensive rookie of the year, all pro selection. Rashawn Slater sat out the season, Pro Bowl left tackle. Sewell, same thing. So you can sit out and still be picked high and still go on to have a Pro Bowl, all pro rookie season. So
Yeah.
He's not going to do that because I think he's just a little bit different than some
Yeah.
of those guys. But
it wouldn't shock me. It wouldn't shock me if it started happening more often.
Oh, I agree. All right, Chad, before we go, just general thoughts about this 2023 draft. I know we're a long ways out.
Yeah.
But is it significantly better than what we saw last year?
I think people will enjoy it a lot more. We're going to be talking about 20 or 25 quarterbacks, and they won't all come out, obviously they won't all be drafted, but we're going to be talking a lot about quarterbacks this year. So That's going to make it a lot more fun. A lot of good running backs, good receivers again. Offensive line maybe not as much, but you've got a lot of talent on defense as well. And I think people are going to have more fun talking about this class this year than last year. So overall, every class has its pluses and minuses, but again, another strong year of underclassmen, another strong year we've got, again, the super seniors coming back into this class, right? We had some last year. This year, I count about 150 of my 900 guys that I've looked at so far are super seniors. So that group is still happening, coming in for a couple more years. And that'll continue to get the depth in the lower rounds to grow as well. So really interesting year. Should be a great season.
Keep an eye on Miami quarterback Tyler Van Dyke. Last 6 games of the season, he averaged 366 passing yards a game, 20 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Miami went 5-1 with him as a starter. He's the one quarterback that I wouldn't be surprised if he gets up to being QB3. Wouldn't totally shock me if he jumps one of the other two, but he's the one I'm keeping an eye on. So you guys,
Will Levis from Kentucky, don't drop that guy either. Will Levis has got some real tools. So
that's
another guy. Anthony Richardson, Florida, Tanner McKee, Stanford. If Ukulele at Clemson can figure it out.
How about my guy up at Boston College?
Yurkovec, absolutely.
Yeah.
He would have. Look, I don't know where he would have went in last year's class, but top 50 probably.
Oh yeah. He might have been the number 1 quarterback drafted. Honestly,
he might have been.
But it's fun.
It's
fun
going to be fun.
Class.
It's going to be fun.
Make sure you guys check out Chad on NFL.com. Again, go listen to him on the Locked On Cowboys podcast as well, talking about some rookies over there. Follow me at Marcus_Mosher. Elliot Harrison will be back next week. We'll see you guys next time.